David Lichtenstein, and welcome to the Yeshiva Shomile. This is going to be our second Chabura on Hechsherim, which are the good, which are the bad, and which are the ugly. As consumers of Kashrus and Shomrei Torah mitzvahs, many people often wonder. They pick up a Hechsher, who's behind it, what's behind it, and is it worth what they're paying for? Are they getting, certainly if they're getting a Hamish Hechsher, is it worth the extra price that they're paying for it? And it's been very frustrating for me because we spoke to, 15 to 20 different Mashgiachim, and none of them want to sort of spill the beans. It's like the blue silence by the police force. So many of them will say they're absolutely better Hechsherim, and they'll be replete with Hashgachas where the Mashgiachim don't show up on time, or they're unqualified, they don't know what they're doing. But who are they? They won't say. So we actually got two Mashgiachim. One Mashgiach who anonymously will speak about it, and we'll have him on the air. And then if you read between the lines of many of the other questions, you'll see that we are able to elicit some information. In fact, if there's any takeaway from this, it is something that's sorely missing. Can I heard there's 1.5 million from Eden in the world? Why don't we have a small VOD that actually tells us who's doing their job and who's not? Just like the U.S. News and World Report rates doctors and hospitals. Shouldn't we have something like that for Hechsherim? Now, interestingly, on our website, we will put a link to the CRC from Chicago, which is one of the most respected Hechsherim in the world. And they write that there are over 1,000 Hechsherim, 1,000 Orthodox Hechsherim. The CRC only puts their stempel, their plumber, on 10% of them. So if you're misupik about a Hechsher, I suggest go to the CRC link on our website. They've done a wonderful job. So this week we have a wonderful lineup of guests. We have Rabbi Ari Center. He's the Rabbinical administrator of the Kof-K. We have Rabbi Chezky Auerbach, Kashrus administrator of the KSA. He's the Rabbi Hamachshir in Lakewood of the NPGS, an experienced Mashgiach. We will have an experienced and veteran Mashgiach for many organizations who wishes to remain anonymous because some of the things he says, you see he would lose his job if he was quoted. And then we will have Rabbi Shmuel Spiegal from Lakewood, a Mashgiach for major Kashrus agencies. Each of them will add something unique to this topic. So before we begin, I would like to give you what my thought is after speaking to oursies. Almost all the Mashgiachim, I think all the Mashgiachim say, if you want to eat kosher, the OU as well as the Kof-K, the OK, the CRC, those are the four largest. They are sort of the standard. They train their Mashgiachim. They keep logs when they show up, when they're not. They have written reports wherever they go. And in general, they're not afraid to recall items. And they have sort of the heft and the stature. They have real strict protocols. But I could speak, let's say, for the OU. There are kulas. On Pringles, for example, there's a kula. Is it called bishalakum or not? Is it in mid-process? Rebelsky had a kula. What's the geder of oil al shulchan malachim? I don't know. Do cooked beets in a can have to have bishul yisrael? Different. What's called a miyat hamatzai? Clearly, they have the OU will give a hechsher on something that's chalav stam, and they have certain kulas on pasakam. So these are kulas that are all ois gehalten. I mean, for example, chalav stam. Ramosha has the famous shuv. Even without Ramosha, the Pri Chadash already writes that in a place where it's not ein eder matzoi, it's mutter. But these are clearly kulas, whereas quote unquote the hamish hechsherim, on the other hand, have no kulas, and therefore you pay a price. I actually sent one of my admins out to the supermarket. I said, can you compare the prices of, let's say, something that is an OU or an OK or a Kof-K, and then it has on top of it another hechsher? And they said, yes. So they came back, and I'll give you a few examples of many. Twizzlers, there's some kosher brand I don't shop much, I can't tell you. It's called Ziskite. In ShopRite with an OU, it's $2.29. If you get it with the Ziskite hechsher, it's $3.29, an extra $1. That's 30% more. It's more than that. I'm sorry, my math isn't so good. An extra $1 on $2.20, it's 45% more. To have Ziskite hechshers, they're extra hechsher on top of the OU. You'll have Hava Baba. It has it's $2.34 In ShopRite and 289. Over there, you're talking another 20%. Weiler's Italianized is Liebers. With the OU, it's $7.99. With Liebers Extra Hashgacha, it's $9.99. 25% difference. So, I don't want to keep you all bored with a shopping list. But you're talking any place from a 45% to as low as, 25 or a 20% difference. So the question is, are you getting your value? So here's what some of the Mashgiachim we spoke to basically said about the Hesher Sherim. He says, we had one, quote-unquote, Hamish Hechsher from China. They have 10 Mashgiachim, that was last week, the SKS, for 1,000 factories in China. In 34 different provinces, right? So it seems they use Kfitzas Haderach. So the question that I want to ask the Hashemish Hachsherim, and we'll have some of the Mashgiachim talk to it. It's true that they have tremendous chumras, but do they show up at the factory? Do they have any expertise in training, or anybody who's coming out of yeshiva who learned Yeridea or didn't learn Yeridea is now an expert on all these complicated systems, where the water is being piped in, how clean a fryer has to be, what a commercial fryer is, what are the other pots, what are the myriad of chemicals that can be used. You take out a product that has 16 chemicals, they're all words. Do you have the expertise? If they're all family members, well, do you fire the family member who missed the plane, maybe slept late and didn't show up for the time of the Hechsher? Or as one Mashgiach will say, he says, a Hamish Hechsher, it's called a Hamish Hechsher because the Mashgiach bleibt in the Heim. We had one Mashgiach tell us, he says he did a Hechsher for Liebers, and Liebers was on the Hechsher. He called up the Mashgiach from the OU, who was also on it. He says, did Liebers do this? Did they do this? And he says, I don't know, because they never showed up. They never show up. So the question is, or as one Mashgiach said, he said, the Hamish Sherim, it's true they have all the chumras, but maybe the product isn't kosher. This is what we will be discussing. And being that a lot of this is, look, one of the speakers we have, none of the people would leave their names. The Mashgiachim we spoke to said, you cannot quote us. So I do want to tell you straight off that it's a little bit ish me piish, and you have to listen and learn, but take it with a grain of salt, because even though these Mashgiachim, I believe, are speaking from their hearts, but at the end of the day, when somebody refuses to put his name, even if it's for his parnasa, you do have to keep it with a little bit of a grain of salt. So I leave that to my listeners. So this week, the parsha of the Auerbach, I want to say a vart or two. I want to say my father said over, when my father, when went to Eretz Yisrael, he went into Rav Abramsky, who were shtickle mishpacha with him, and he was talking about the Auerbach. The Auerbach is the most myriad. It's the only creature that's al shem haroiv. Interesting. Adam is there's no rabbim for man, whereas Auerbach means the many. Roiv doesn't have a yachid. It's amazing. It's like the opposite of man. He said Abramsky said over. It says by Rabbi Lezer ben Abrach, the Mishnah talks about how great he was. He says if all the Chachmei Yisrael were bekaf echad, and who bekaf sheni, he's machriya es kulam. He was greater than all the Chachmei Yisrael. So Rabbi Abramsky said to my father, he said, "What's the message here? Who cares? It's like you're trading all-star cards in baseball. You know, when I was a kid, we used to have baseball cards. This MVP for that MVP. What's the nafkamina?" So Rabbi Abramsky said, the mission is telling you, hu machriya es kulam, that Eichus is greater than Kamlas. Ein Lezer ben Arach is greater than all Chachmei Yisrael. You see the power of quality. Or like Rav Hutner once said, he said a Mayan is Matayr, it doesn't need Memsa, either Kolshahu, whatever, but a Mayan is Matayr with a Tipa, whereas a Mikveh means Memsa. So Rav Hutner once said, a Tropfen Chiddush, a drop of Chiddush, is greater than Memsa of Stam Mayim. So we look at the Auerbach, Klal Yisrael, who's the Tzura of Adam and Klal Yisrael, in the Olam is Klal Yisrael. We have to remember, what is our Yechidus? Our Yechidus is our Koyach HaChiddush, where we can remain individuals and not lose our own sense of identity because of the masses, because of crowdthink. So I want to say over a vart on it says, Dalit Kitin, by Yetzias Mitzrayim, and you know, we all have our own personal Yetzias Mitzrayim. We certainly have it in life when we make the big decisions, who to marry, where to go to yeshiva, when to leave yeshiva, if to leave yeshiva, what type of parnasa. There are parnasas that are bezuyos, that are full of gzela and geneva, and and people sometimes unfortunately we see from the papers, do the worst things. We all have Yetzias Mitzrayim. We have to make big decisions in our life. It's many times in our life, and if we say it B'chol Shana V'Shana, it seems each of us has a Yetzias Mitzrayim of Chol Shana V'Shana. What's your Mitzrayim? So here's an interesting medrash. The medrash says Yerushalmi and a Mechilta. The Yerushalmi says that Dalit Kitin, 4 groups, congregated by the Yamsuf, and they had this big philosophical disagreement. They saw the Mitzrim coming. One group said, Nipa Layam, let's just jump into the water, commit suicide. It's helpless. The other one said, Nachzer Mitzrayim. No, we lost. If you can't beat them, join them. Just go back to Mitzrayim. The other one said, Nasim Mochama. Let's go to war. And the fourth one said, no, let's be Mispal. And I think that these 4 Kittim show up very often in our lives. We're faced some type of a very adversarial situation. One part of us says, Nipa Layam, listen, just throw in the towel. Another one says, let's do crowd think. Let's do what my neighbor said. Look, this is the best shidduch, this is the best school, this is the best job. Let's go with crowd think. Let's just go the easy way out, the way everybody says. Not give up, let's go. Sometimes you think, Neitzel Mochama. Let's go to war. I'm going to do it. I'm going to survive. I'm going to overcome. And one says, his part says, maybe be mispal. Let's go back to, in yeshiva. Let's go take out a gemara. Be mispal. These are 4 choices we have every time we come to our Yetzias Mitzrayim. And here's what's interesting. None of them happened. They didn't Nipa Layam. They didn't commit suicide. They didn't go back to Mitzrayim. They didn't do a Mochama. And they didn't stop and just daven. What happened? The Rabbi Shalom said, Dabro b'nei Yisrael, Yisrael, take a step forward. Right? What does that mean? When we have choices, we're about to make some dramatic thing, and we're feeling all alone, and we want to do something vild or dramatic. The Rabbi Shalom says, you know what? Have faith. Have emunah. Don't lose your own sense of thought, your own individuality by doing crowd thing, Nachzal Mitzrayim join. Don't lose faith in yourself and say Nipa Layam, give up. Mochama, don't necessarily. Sometimes Mochama is good. It's not necessarily the right thing too. Sometimes Kaychi Veitzimadi is not the right thing. And davening, it's wonderful to davening, but you also need Ishtadlus. What's the answer? Believe in the Rabbeinu Shalom. Take one step forward. Hold on to your individuality. Hold on to your identity. Hold on to what you were taught. And you know what? The Rabbeinu Shalom will come through. Whatever your belief is, do it slowly. Do it carefully. None of these 4. And you know what? And you'll see Yeshua that way. I think there's a powerful message in this week's parsha to all the different Mitzrayims that each one of us have. Before we go to our guests, I'd like to ask a riddle. I'm going to ask 2 riddles this week. Both, I think, are pretty hard. One is by the Arba. It's the only Makkah where the Rabbeinu Shalom does not tell Moshe what to do. By the Dam, he says, hit it, it's going to turn Dam, go tell Parei. Here, Moshe, out of his own, walks into Parei, and he says, Arba, maybe Arba B'Gvalecha. How did he know? There's no tzivay on the Arba. So the question is why, and 2, but more, how did Moshe know? That's riddle number 1, simplistic riddle. But here's a more complicated riddle. It says like this. The famous Yalkut Shemaini, it says, Vayikach Moshe atzmas Yosef imay. So it says, Medrash, the Yalkut Shemaini here in Remez, Reish Chav Zayin says, Not al cheres, v'kosav alav shem hamafurash v'shlicha li'ar. He took a cheres, he wrote on it the shem hamafurash, he threw it into the water, and miraculously, Yosef's casket bobbed to the top. Allah Arayne Shal Yosef. So here's the question. The Gemara in Sukkah says that when, on Daf Nun Gimel, that when David was digging the shitin for the Mizbeach, right? So what happened? The water from the Tahaim Rabbah came up. Uboy lemishtafa alma, wanted to drown the world. So David said, can I continue digging? He put his finger there, I guess, to stop it from coming. And he said, am I allowed to dig? He says, so David asked the following question. I know I have a way out of this. I could take a chaspa, write the Shem HaMefarish, and drop it in and stop it. Am I allowed to throw it in and therefore continue digging, or do I have to stop digging, close up the hole? Is it mutter to be moichik shem hamafirish, not bederach bezayin? That was the chakir of David HaMelech. He wasn't doing it derech bezayin. This mechika was l'tzayrach. Are you allowed to be moichik at l'tzayrach? And he didn't know what to do, and nobody wanted to come forward. So David gave a curse, and he said, whoever doesn't knows the answer and doesn't will choke. So it says Achitophel came and he made a kal v'chayma. He said, Uma, you're allowed to be moichik the shem hamafirish for to bring shalom ben ishel ishtai by a saita. Kal v'chayma, you're allowed to do it to save the whole world, and therefore you're allowed to throw in the chaspa, that mechikas Hashem. If it's l'tzayrach acher, it's not derech bezayin, is mutter. So the question is, why did Achitophel have to bring a raya from Saita? He could have brought a raya from. You have a very similar case. It says here in the Alkut Shemayim, what did Moshe do? Not al cheres v'kasav of shem hamafayir v'shlichei liyair tzaf ala reinish al Yosef. Why did he have to go all the way to Parshas Nosei to Saita? He could have done it in Sefer Shemais. Here in Bishalach had the same klal. You see that you're allowed to be moichik the shem hamafirish, where it's not derech bezayin. Those are our two riddles of the week. So let's go to our wonderful guests. We have with us on the phone from Lakewood, New Jersey, Rabbi Chezky Auerbach. He's the Kashrus administrator for the KSA. He's also in charge of the Kashrus for Lakewood's NPGS, the Kyle supermarket. He's a Talmud of Beis Medrash Gevaya. He's a musmach of Rashiv of Lakewood, Zechaim Levracha, Reb Shnei Kotler. Welcome, Rabbi Auerbach.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Rabbi Auerbach, I'm going to use an analogy. When a person goes to the doctor, they find out where he went to yeshiva, where he went to school, how good he is, which hospital, who had a good experience. They're putting their hands in their life or their health in somebody's hands. When it comes to kashrus, which it's, our ruchniistic neshama is to a certain extent totally in kashrus, right? It's metamta misalev. We get a stamp. It's some type of an emblem with letters in it and either a circle or not a circle or a box and a triangle. And the consumer in America or internationally has absolutely no idea. Is this a doctor who was looking at, is this the guy who was, before the tests was going through the data, or was actually memorizing, he had the cheat sheet? We know nothing. And we take something that it's an Avish and a Neshama Tluyaba. It's one of the two things that the Rambam puts in Hilchos Kedusha, in the Sefer Kedusha, and we know nothing. It's a black box. How, as a consumer, do we know, is it a good hechsher? Is it a bad hechsher? Do they pay their Mashgiachim so that they get top Mashgiachim? Are they makber on your Shemayim? Do they pay for the extra plane fare, cab fare to do the due diligence? How do we know? It's like, I would never go to a doctor with the information I have when I bite into a Danish. What are we supposed to do? Give us some advice.
This happens to be an excellent question. It's an extremely pressing question, and it's the drum that I've been beating for many, many years, where I have spoken in public frequently in shuls, for which I'm never invited back, because I tell the people that it is their responsibility to form a kashrus committee and ask that the Rav teach them what they're supposed to be concerned with, and then they can't obviously storm the office of the kashrus agencies, but together with the Rav, a committee should meet with them, at least on the phone, meet with the various agencies with a list of informational questions that they and the Rav have formulated, and weigh the results and the answers. The clearest sign that somebody is not doing their job is if they will not honestly and with complete transparency address questions that are asked them in honesty.
So what questions, Rabbi Auerbach, give us a list of a number of questions that you say you should be asking. You meaning me and everybody listening.
It's a hard one, but if you had to be put to the wall, for instance, let's break this into two separate parts. If you going to be talking about, for instance, like food service, which is really negeya in a very real fashion. Anybody that eats outside of their home, whether it's at their child's bar mitzvah, at their child's chasana, or at their brother's sheva brachas, whatever it's going to be, if you eat outside your house, you are putting yourself at the mercy of the Hamachshir. If you go to a place and you say, I'd like to speak to the Mashgiach, and they say, oh, we don't have a Mashgiach, he comes every once in a while, that's a real good reason to turn around and walk out. If there's nobody there who is responsible to the Hamachshir to have answers available and to interface with the public, this shows that there is I wouldn't say it's a depraved indifference to the to the public's well-being, but it shows a callous indifference to the comfort level of the kosher consumer.
So give us a list of 3 questions that a consumer, an ignorant consumer like myself, you think should ask. One is there a Mashgiach here on site that I could speak to? What would be number 2?
If the answer to that is no,
you have your insight.
This is a real. If there is no if the Mashgiach is not here at the present time, and all they're doing is, let's say, just some commissaries do all their prep work in the morning, all the deliveries are made in the morning, everything that's taken care of is taken care of in the morning, and there's a Mashgiach. The vegetables are checked, the meats, everything, the meats and fish, and those type of things, or if, let's say, in the pizza shop, the cheese. By the way, the price differential, people think, oh, milk is nothing. The difference in the price differential between non-kosher cheese and Chalav Yisrael cheese is astronomical. So there is certainly as much of a reason to be concerned about milchiks as there is about fleishiks. But if a Mashgiach is not in charge of receiving the materials to be able to check out each thing as it comes in, there is nothing. Even if there's a Frum Balabas, if the Frum Balabas is so busy, and many of the hashgachas that say, well, a Frum Balabas will make sure everything's okay, I think miss the point that a Frum Balabas is very busy being a Frum Balabas. He's meeting with customers, he's making plans, he's trying to help out clients, all these things. Meanwhile, deliveries come in. By the time the Frum Balabas, with the best of intentions, catches his breath and goes downstairs to the basement to see what was delivered that day, the product quite probably was already in use. Or it's stuck away somewhere on the shelf that he's not going to have the opportunity to look at each individual item to see what it was. This is particularly cogent, for instance, concerning Yashan. Almost all companies that deliver to Frum places will have multiple sources for product. They'll have, for instance, Yashan and non-Yashan of identical products. That means there's a flour called All Trumps that is available. If you buy it far enough in advance, you'll be able to stock up on Yashan and deliver it. I've been to distributors where they have in one alley in their warehouse, they will have on one side of the aisle, they're going to have Yashan All Trumps, and on the other side, they'll have non-Yashan All Trumps. And the foreign national who doesn't speak English doesn't suddenly magically read English when he has an order form in his hands that says Yashan, to make sure that he's taking from the right side of the aisle, not the left side of the aisle. The only way...
You're saying basically, you think a Mashgiach Tzmidi in every food service, in every restaurant, is an important thing, and if someplace doesn't happen, then there's a chance that something's getting away from you.
Without a question.
Okay, what is another thing that you would ask?
Okay. Another thing that they ask, that a person should ask is, for instance, this splits up into so many different things. For instance, vegetables. Do you check your own vegetables? Is there a separate person who checks vegetables? If the answer is no, we wash it off well, that's not. I'm not saying it's not kosher, but it's certainly not something that a person that is thinking, concerned person should be comfortable with. If they say no, we only use stuff with the hechsher, you have the right to ask which hechsher. If a person says like we use bodek, we use positive, we use kosher taste, fine. At least you know they're dealing with reputable people who have expertise in the field. If you say, I don't know, it has a sticker on it, with the Yiddish ICs, this is a very dangerous thing. A fleishke place, certainly you should ask if the Mashgiach, and again, if part of that first question was if the Mashgiach accept deliveries of places, because most distributors have various items that they will distribute, different hechsherim, different types of products, Meretz Yisrael from America, processed, non-processed. As an example, there is a certain Schlachtes in America which has they have actually three different product streams. One shechita of North America, one shechita of South America, another which is a different type of shechim of a certain chassidus that other people either will or won't be happy with. But again, only if there's someone there to receive delivery will that be clear and locked in.
You would ask the Mashgiach, does he accept the deliveries personally?
Yes, absolutely. If he checks in the deliveries, it's a critically important part of the hashgacha job is to check in the products. And
so, Rabbi Auerbach, let me ask you another question.
Right.
Now, let's talk factories. We bring into our house everything basically with a hechsher, right?
Yes.
How do I know if it's a good hechsher or not? I'm buying tuna fish. It has some hechsher on. How do I know? You're getting European hechsherim.
Yes.
I have no idea. I'm not from Europe. Do I know if the hechsherim in Europe are good? What do we do?
Well, first of all, as a flat fact, European hechsherim work to a different standard than the American hechsherim. The American kosher market is robust enough that first of all, companies come looking for hechsherim. You don't have to go hat in hand to a hechsher and say to a company and say, "Oh, listen, our Jewish community needs something. Can you please cooperate with us? And we're not going to make any trouble for you." And European, I Chas v'Shalom have no faribel in the European hechsherim in the European communities that aren't large enough to leverage their muscle into this. But certainly, American hechsherim, b'derech klal, you can assume even commercial hechsherim are much more robust, much stronger, certainly more at a higher level of expertise.
So do you eat European hechsherim?
Very, very few. Very few.
Can I ask you which American hechsherim, if you had to rate them, could you give us here is this is the A list, this is the B list. Could you give us as consumers some insight?
You mean you asked me to shoot myself in my foot? Is that what you asked me?
You know what? I want to tell you something, Rabbi Auerbach. This is what I say.
Yeah.
I say that if you saw somebody drowning, right, you would throw them a life. You would throw them a life. Right? If you saw somebody doing if you saw somebody about to, by accident, put in something, a cheeseburger, you would say, "Excuse me." There's a din of Leisamed al Damar Yecha. There's a din of Lifta Eva Leisit and Michel. You could be matzel so many people by pointing out, here are the better ones. Here are the ones you should be focusing on.
Okay, so I'm going to
this program will have a minimum of 25,000 people who will listen to it. When do you have the opportunity to be mizaka 25,000 people, which means if they have families, it could be 50 or 100,000 people who they're feeding, to say, this is what you should be putting in your children's mouth. There's a famous story that they say over, somebody came to Kivege, he said he had a son, he was mamish so bright, his son, Tyrus Nishtrain Gangabam in cup. So Kivege asked, and he found that one time he ate someplace and he wasn't medagdik, and it was metamtam aleva moyach, and he gave him all tshuva to be masakin it.
Right.
You could do that 25,000 or 100 times over. Give us some advice, some practical, real hands advice.
Okay, so I'm going to do this in a roundabout way, because first we're going to from the Lavat Ishmael. Nobody goes to China to produce kosher food so that they can get a better kosher quality and save the consumer money. People go to manufacture there because they're looking for the cheapest thing that they have, and they can charge the same high price, and they compromise the quality of the product, the health of the consumer, and the quality of the kashrus. Because in China, you have to assume, and I get 4 or 5 different trade journals in my inbox every day, and the consistent thing across all industries is that China is a quicksand trap waiting for the disaster to befall somebody. So the first thing I would say, that if you want to make one Kabbalah that will certainly immediately have a positive effect on your kashrus, do not allow anything into your house from China. I don't care whose hashgacha it is.
Wait, so let me just ask. My job, I get paid here to push back.
Good.
we had on a very credible thing. He said, we produce in China.
Mm-hmm.
I said, how do you deal with the kashrus? He says, we only produce in China things that kashrus is not really an issue. Like they'll produce. I said, what? I didn't push back on. He said, we do waters in China. And it was things that are not really. It's very derivative that would be a kashrus issue.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Would you agree with that or not?
Well, it is certainly in China. It's impossible to know what they're going to do wrong. For instance, in America, it's reasonable to project. Let's say you have a canned good. And we're not going to start talking about all the shilos of bishlakim, what is or is not. But let's say a cannery where you have a retort cannery. In America, you're not going to find in the same retort, in the same kalim, kosher vegetables and pork. In China, you don't know what you're going to find. If you have a responsibility, there is no way for a person to be able to anticipate the twists and turns of what takes place in the Chinese market.
Yeah, they eat rabbit. They eat snakes over there. You may find out that
they poison children in order to bring the assay up of protein in their formula. They put poison. Remember the melamine thing? There were 60,000 children that died, and they would not even let the WHO in to try to investigate where it was. They don't care.
Right. Okay. So one easy one. If it's coming from China, the hechsher is probably dubious. Next, what else?
That's first of all. Now I'll tell you a story. This was told to me by a friend of mine. This is only cliche. I did not hear it firsthand. Somebody whom I trust, you don't have to, I trust, told me the following story. That when Rabbi Auerbach was still alive, the Edo, he had sent a Mashgiach to America to do a production here. And somehow or another, the Mashgiach was stuck here. He had to be, and he ran out of food. So he called Rabbi Blau in a panic and said, "What do I do? I'm in the middle of, Wyoming, and we're making a production. I would have food." So he said, "Go to the supermarket, and if something has an OU on it, you know that this was dealt with by professionals. It's not a hefgewalt. It's not some guy sitting in his office somewhere counting his money saying, God, this is probably kosher. It's not a problem. A commercial hechsher." Now, the reason I'm saying OU is because this is what the story was. I'm saying all the story the way it was. If you have a commercial hechsher that is recognized universally as a professional organization, that is manned by professional, not only mashgichim, but people with administrative know-how and the scientific understanding to be able to know how products are manufactured, and the hachna and the relationships with Talmidei Chachamim and Paiskim to be able to present shilas and then take the tshuvas that they get and apply them to the knowledge that they have, that is always more secure than somebody who's patching around. And as people have told me, these Hamachshir told me, of course I opened the hechsher. I need money for my kail. Of course I opened the hechsher.
So who are the institutional hechsherim? Who are they?
The KSA, the OU. I have a lot of respect for the OU. They more than any other hechsher, they staff up to deal with the crunch and the crush of business that they have.
Right. Okay.
In Eretz Yisrael.
Wait. Go in America. You said you worked for the Kof-K.
Yes, I did.
Is that an institutional hechsher?
It is an institutional hechsher, and they do their job well.
Okay, go through the American ones, because most of our listeners, we get some Israel. We're going to do a special show on Eretz Yisrael, by the way.
Okay.
Who in America? What are the bigger institutional hechsherim? You say they're staffed, they're prepared, they have the manpower, they do the diligence, they spend the money, etc.
Yeah, and by the way, the OU and the KSA, I have spoken frequently in public about the public's responsibility to approach hechsherim, and universally, the one that I get back feedback from people saying that they actually called me back, they actually answered my questions, was the OU. If you're going to go to agencies and you can't find anybody to answer your question, and you can't get an answer once you leave the question, then that's a reason not to be suspicious of how well they're doing their job.
Because they're not manned, they're undemanned. It's just become a profit center,
exactly.
And returning phone calls costs money.
Exactly so.
Okay, who else are the institutional hechsherim?
I think that I'm not going to start going through one by one.
What about the CRC? Would you say they're institutional?
The CRC in Chicago?
Yeah.
The CRC in Chicago is a very high-level hechsher. They are staffed by B'nai Torah. They are very public-minded. They're very concerned for the well-being of the kosher consumer. They go above and beyond the call in making sure that they supply the kosher consumer with information that will be helpful to them.
So which of the Hamish Hechsherim do you like?
The Nir Batarov is a person whom I've met with many, many times, spoken to many, many times. He is a professional. He once joked with me that there must have been some yeki somewhere up in the family, in the yichus, that snuck into the family because he has a teva of yakishkeit with his office. I've been to his office, and what I do or try to do with the Hamish Hechsherim is I would go to their office and they take a specific production, because all these guys go into other companies. None of these people manufacture their own product. They go into other places. And I say, let's take this, and I'll prepare it. I say, here is the product, here is the production date of this product. Show me your file. I want to know who was there. One person actually told me, no, the Mashgiach, we don't have any of the receipts. I said, really? It costs about $6,000 or $8,000 to make this production, and you don't want to claim that on your taxes for your expenses? No. And the Mashgiach just called you up and said, listen, I spent $6,000, please send it to me. You sent it. You don't have receipts. No, and you can't show me the receipt for the airline ticket. He didn't walk to Wyoming. No. Okay, so somebody who doesn't have those records is because the records don't exist. But I've gone nearby to many times, and he's been able to randomly pull out files for each and every product, every production. People
now,
like
if a consumer like me called up the Nir Barta and I said, I see you giving a hechsher on ABC, would you share with me the Mashgiach's history of a tenant? Would they share it to a regular consumer or no?
That's a very good question. And I know that I've sent people to call the Nir Barta, and they've come back satisfied. On the other hand, sometimes people have told me that he didn't call me back or whatever. And he's an extremely busy person. He has a huge plate full of stuff. He does Ali Meal Mart, which is and again, he does Mishpacha, and these are serious concerns and serious complicated things, and he's on top of it. So it could be that he doesn't have. He does Began.
So can I ask you a question, an unfair question? That's what people pay me for. If you had to choose, you could eat Nirabart or OU. Which do you take?
I would probably take the Nirabart.
And because of why?
Because the Nirabart, to my specific and personal knowledge, will turn down Hechsherim if he doesn't feel that it would be to the best interest of the kosher consumer. I know that because I brought him stuff, and he said, no, I don't want to get involved in that. And the OU, and any hechsher, the KSA has the same thing, that when a company comes to us, it is our responsibility, the way we hold up our end of the rope with the kosher consumer is by taking a viable hechsher and doing it excellently.
They feel they have a communal responsibility to give a hechsher.
Yeah. That's what commercial hechsherim should exist for the purpose of bettering the state of kashrus in America or the world.
Okay. Are there hechsherim that you won't eat?
Yeah.
Could you tell us some that you say as a consumer, I would not eat this hechsher? You say, I want to be matzal you and your family, you have a son, you want him to shteigais, to be an Adam Gadol. I would be very concerned if you're eating this hechsher. Not because it's not kosher, but because...
Okay, I would be very concerned eating anything coming out of China, and I would be very concerned of hechsherim that are comprised of one single person that find themselves in South America and in Spain and in China and in England and in Belgium and in Eretz Yisrael, and they're involved in shchita and in baking and in chalav Yisrael and in cheese and all sorts of things. And where you're dealing there with one or two people, then that's those are people I'd be very, very worried about.
So we basically, in other words, is it fair to say the larger the organization, the more likely that it's going to be good?
Yes. And
But how do we? So Rabbi Auerbach, I'm coming across this issue. It's called, in the police world, it's called the blue wall.
Right.
Nobody that we've spoken to is willing to say, here are the better actors. Well, you said some of the better actors, but here are the bad actors.
I believe you're right. And if a group of, for instance, I have certain serious issues, let's say, with the way certain grape juices are manufactured in the United States. I am not going to take time to, or even opportunity to tell a civilian the details of this. I have addressed companies of Rabbanim when Rabbanim say, listen, we heard you make an announcement that this is not acceptable, this isn't good, what would you like? And I was extremely candid. And I believe that these Rabbanim, I met with them because these Rabbanim have then a responsibility to go back and they can decide how and in exact what proportion they're going to educate their particular kehillah. I think that is much more reasonable than making announcements on podcasts to 25,000 people. I think that Rabbanim, if people who hear this podcast say, I'm concerned, I'm going to go to my Rav, and the Rav will come and there will be serious, mature inquests made, that is the forum in which real information should be shared and should be acted on.
But Rabbi Auerbach, Rabbanim are very busy. Rabbanim also, for the most part, are fearful of what people will say to them, and I'm not so fearful. I mean, I honestly think that's kicking the can.
Okay. I understand that you think so, and I understand that.
And what's my proof of the?
No, I think that you want to splash you want to splash on your podcast, Reb David, and I agree with you.
Can I ask you, if it was a doctor who was performing poorly, would you feel comfortable doing it?
Where it's universally poorly, where it's
there's a hospital. I go online. I say, Maimonides Hospital is a place. It's a sakana to go into. I know people who went into for minor procedures, never walked out of there alive. Yep. It has a terrible record. Yeah, I'll say it on the air. Maimonides wants to sue me. They have my address. I'm not afraid to say that. If I knew the same thing about a particular kashrus organization, I would say, you're putting your neshama on the line by eating from them. What's the shlach?
Okay. So I will respond in the following fashion. And I just had this discussion yesterday with the Rav here in Lakewood. There are two different types of people who are kashrus consumers. There are people who are looking to skim along and they just barely keep to this side of the edge of what's acceptable. And you can't twist somebody's arm and say, that's silly, don't do that. And then there are people who will bother making the inquiries. And because there are certain things, for instance, in NPGS that we will have on our shelves, that if somebody calls me and say, should I eat this? I'll say, no, I really don't recommend that you eat that. And they'll say, so why do you have it on the shelf? And I tell them, because there is a certain line below which we will not accept product. On the other hand, if somebody bothers making the effort of calling me, what they're communicating to me is, I don't want to know if this is minimally acceptable. I want to know above and beyond. Is this for somebody that's above and beyond? So make the effort. If you make the effort, then you deserve a different answer. If you don't make the effort, then you're Amcha. And Amcha people, this is good enough for Amcha people. People have made their choice on their own.
Rabbi, are there hechsherim that you would say fall below the line?
There are some, yes. There certainly are. Anything with a triangle K, I would not under any circumstance take into my home. Unless it's something like water that doesn't require hechsher.
Give us a few more hechsherim that you say, this is below the line. If you're a Erlich Yid, you should not have this in your house.
I don't believe the KF on something which requires a hechsher is something that belongs in a Ben Terry's house.
I'm sorry, the KF?
Yes.
Okay.
That's on Red Bull, by the way, so if you're waiting for the blowback, here it comes.
Okay. What else? Give us a few more. These are dvarim pshutim. Most people have no idea of this. Red Bull,
There's a place, his name is Steinberg, he has a very cute, because in order to not be sued, he made himself a logo with a coffee cup on its side with a K in the opening of the cup, and he calls himself the Kof-K, so that he can piggyback on the public recognition of the Kof-K, and he does a lot of vegetarian and these type of restaurants in New York. He does a lot more else. He does fleshka places too, and it's absolutely not something I would recommend under any circumstance. I would certainly recommend against it.
Okay. Could you give us, Rabbi Auerbach, the 5 golden stars or the 6? These are the best. This is the class that all Hachsherim have to aspire to be.
I believe that now 5. How about 4.5? Because 5 means they never make any mistakes.
Everybody makes mistakes. It could be 4.5. My point, I think everybody makes mistakes. We're not talking about mistakes. We're talking about somebody who has overall a quality of excellence. And Babe Ruth struck out many, many times, right? Yep. But who is the quality of excellence? If all Hachsherim were like this, well, good given, what would they be?
I would have to say it would be Nerabarta.
Nerabarta, okay.
There's a lot of moving pieces in this particular puzzle, because in certain aspects others are better, some better than others. Shia Katz is very careful. He has very few Hachsherim. I think he's called the Magrava.
Who else?
Can I say the KSA?
No, that's the gay Avadavar, so we can't really.
Okay.
But that could be the half. How's that? Like I said, Rabbi Yankov Blau said that if you take something with an OU, you know that it was dealt with by professionals. That's not to say that they don't have their shortcomings, but you know that it's a group of professionals who have pride in what they do, mostly, and they would not put something out knowingly. What do you think of the European Hachsherim? You say you would not take into your house. What do you think of? How do the American Hachsherim compare to the Israeli Hachsherim? OU versus Badat.
Well, there is no question that the 3 upper echelon, the Badat, Rabbi Landau, and Rabbi Rubin, are certainly above what you're going to find in the United States with anybody. Period.
Even though Rabbi Elephant from the OU disagrees with you, you know that. He says he thinks that the OU is better than Badat, it's better than Landau, better than Rubin.
Okay. That's one of the great things about living in America. Everybody has their opinion.
Okay, in closing, is there any question I should have asked you that I didn't?
You've been pretty direct, and you should have asked, why do people demand every single possible, or better yet, if you would have asked me, what is the single most cancerous part of the Jewish milieu that's endangering kashrus, I would say it's this insatiable demand that kosher consumers have, that anything and everything must be kosher. Because what it turns into is that the balabatim, the seichrim, go to their hechsher and say, here, I demand this be made kosher, and if you won't, I'll find somebody else. And there was a story, I got sidetracked earlier about the story I was telling you, that there was a vegetable company, a frozen vegetable company in China, which had a hechsher originally, and then it changed. And it turns out, because the original guy wanted much, much, much more Mashgiach presence, and the Balabas found somebody later who would give him a third of that presence.
Who was that party? Which party required only a third?
The frozen vegetables that has a different hechsher now.
Which one is it?
You live near a kosher supermarket?
There's hundreds of frozen. I mean, there's dozens frozen vegetables.
Actually, there aren't. Actually, there are only a few frozen vegetables coming from China.
So it's frozen vegetables coming from China. You say the old hechsher didn't want to do it, and the new one does.
Well, the old hechsher wanted to do it under very strict guidelines,
and
where they had mashgiachim, they had 3 shifts of mashgiachim, and the new hashgacha was able to find a way to do it with 1/3 of that. And so the Balabas said, listen, as long as I have the Yiddish ISIS to print on my packaging, it's going to sell. So why do I have to go spend 3 times the money?
And which shechita, Rabbi Auerbach do you say? If it, would it be the same Hechsherim for Shechita the way in the same lineup you gave us?
No.
Okay, give us on Shechita.
Well, the absolute top of the line Shechita in America, I personally believe, is the NPGS. We have our own Shechita. I would say that Solomon's the Nearbucker does a good job, a good solid job. Solomon's is better than that.
Okay.
And again, you're looking at what is commonly available.
Yeah.
Those are the two that I would toss out there. Anything else you'd have to look at carefully before you. South America is a problem, so you're going to want to stick to North American beef because the beef are healthier, and the Schlachtheiser. The greatest thing that keeps people honest is somebody looking over their shoulder, and the Schlachtheiser here in North America are Rosh Hashanah, and people know that if they try to cut corners, everybody's going to know about it by next week. So that's a great. So North American beef, Solomon's, this Skvera Hashgach, by the way, does an excellent job. Skvera is, generally speaking, on top of their game. The reason I neglect to bring it up is because they have it on very few items. They're not aggressive whatsoever in pushing their items. They have no.
Now, you spoke very highly. You said over from Rabbi and OU. What do you think of the OU Shechita?
That's a good question. I have no personal knowledge of the OU Shechita at the present time.
Rabbi Auerbach, it's been an honor to have you on with us. If I'm ever in Lakewood, I'm going to for sure stop by NPGS and buy their Shechita.
And you could stop by and face-to-face, I will tell you any information. That if somebody bothers making the trek to find out what is better, I'm always happy to help them directly. But as I said, I don't think that this, I couldn't say more than they did on this particular forum. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye. We have with us on the phone Rabbi Ari Senta. He's the rabbinical administrator of the Kof-K. He's a Talmud of Ner Yisrael of Teres Moshe. He's a Musmach of Rabbi Aaron Felder. Welcome, Rabbi Ari.
Shalom Aleichem, David. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. So let's talk some questions about Hashgacha. Kof-K does, I imagine, many restaurants as well as factories, etc., correct?
The Kof-K has actually limited restaurants. Predominantly, the Kof-K is involved in factories. There are a handful of restaurants that we're doing, although we've now assisted the RCBC, the Rabbinical Council of Bergen County, in their administration of their restaurants. But our direct certification of restaurants is actually quite limited.
So let me ask you something. Take a restaurant, because that's what most of us, very few of our listeners, including myself, have seen a factory, right? You give a hashgacha in a factory, or a restaurant or a factory, how frum does a mashgiach have to be? Because you could have somebody, he's a most honest guy, and he's, we don't know how frum he is. Or do you have somebody, should he have a beard? I know I had on this Satma, the Sheichtim, they said to me, Sheichit, in Skver you have to wear boots and your wife can't drive. What is your profile of a mashgiach?
Okay, are you asking Kof-K
Kof-K,
individually or
yes.
in general?
Kof-K and halachically, both.
Okay, halachically, there is a debate amongst the poskim within the Kashrus organizations, the answer to that question, exactly the exact level of frumkeit of each individual person. In the mother technically of halacha, which nobody will do, but technically, the paskin, in the beginning of Maseches Chulin, a mumble davar echad is not a mumble chodar kula. But I don't think anybody's going to walk in and say, you know what, this person, he's a mummer and he's violating these firm, but I'm going to be makabel as a mashgiach. So what is the technical halacha and what is going to be actually direct application? For all intents and purposes, we believe that the person who functions as a mashgiach is something that our clientele would be comfortable eating in their home, would be comfortable, that the level of shirts and mitzvahs, the shemer Torah mitzvahs, and whether they're Hasidic mitzvahs, modern Orthodox, that to us doesn't really make a difference. They have to be shemer Torah mitzvahs. The exact affiliation is not necessarily relevant to us.
Now, Rabbi, the Shulchan Aruch in Kuf Yud Tes Yud Aleph does say that, according to the Ramah, you have to be muchzik He has to be muchzik l'kashrus.
Right. Agreed.
So, and interestingly, the Aruch HaShulchan, because muchzik l'kashrus is very, very debatable. What does it mean, muchzik l'kashrus? Some will say he only eats, hamish shechita. Some will say it means he davens 3 times a day with a minion. So the Aruch HaShulchan on the spot just says that it has to be, his lashon is he does not have to be a tzaddik, a chassid v'tzaddik, ela kol shemisnag al pidas Yisrael meiniach talos u'tfilin u'mispalel gimel pamim v'yoyim v'noitel yadav la'achila u'manig b'nei beisai b'kashrus. That's what he says has a din of that's the Aruch HaShulchan's parameters, and I would say that seems very similar to what you require.
Right. Now, Moshe also differentiates, and we're going to have to differentiate in the circumstances. Moshe, in a tshuva, differentiates whether or not the establishment is owned by a yid, the establishment is owned by a frum yid, or the establishment is owned by a goy. Obviously, the level of shmirah of a Mashgiach on a frum establishment is different. Additionally, dependent on what the person's achrayus is, as we find that Taisus talks about something that's muchzik b'isser, for example, checking b'dikat tlan, which may have a tirchi yasera, the level nemanis is a different level. So I would qualify my initial statement is depending on the level of responsibility. Take a Mashgiach, and you put a Mashgiach into a hotel that's kashering and running a kosher and non-kosher event at the same time. Again, I'm talking very much in a theoretical for myself because we don't have that many, but in a practical sense, the kashrus agencies that are going into these hotels, the level of expertise and the level of nemanis is a totally different story. Additionally, let's move over to an event that a person doing a Shabbos event. So then the risk environment is much higher. The event, if for whatever reason something happens and now you're getting into Shehiyah Chazar problems, they have to have a keys and halacha. They also have to have the backbone to potentially, if something unforeseen occurs, which Shabbos environments created, they have to have the backbone to be able to look at 300 customers or 300 clients and say, sorry, we're not having chalk today. So that level of achrayus changes based on the nature of the environment.
Okay, that's very interesting. I was actually at a bar mitzvah. Curious what you would say, and the plug fell out of the heater, and it was the middle of the night, and I get a knock on the door, and they say, could you please tell us what to do? The plug fell out. We're not going to have cholent or kugel tomorrow. Basically, you have the possibility of putting it to a different oven. So then in reference to the food, your shaila is only a shaila of shvus to shvus b'makom mitzvah. In reference to the food, in reference to that, you're adding a nuance to the story. Not only do I not have another oven, not only is it unplugged, but now I don't have another oven, and my shaila is simply plugging it back in. So clearly, this is far beyond my scope. What do I mean by that? That is going to go again into the shaila of electricity, whether electricity is an issa d'oraisa and issa d'rabbanan. Because let's go again. In the event that electricity is only an issa d'rabbanan, we're back. We once again have a shvus b'makom mitzvah, and that would technically be matter. In the event that electricity is a shaila of d'oraisa, well, I would take the position that electricity, most paiskim nems on a drabanan, but when it's going into a warmer, you have to assume that this electricity is making the coil red hot, which is malabin, which is a deraisa l'kulei alma l'chayra, no? Well, it depends on the nature of the weapon. From what I understand, the coils and so on and so forth. Even in that, yes, most paiskim are agreeable that would be a shayla of a deraisa. Again, Ramah brings down the mokum tzara gadol, and that's again paisik. That our paiskim that are mekel and real akum on this deraisa. Yeah. Baruch Hashem, I'm not. What the Kof-K Bezdin we're passing here does it is the major challenge that we're going to present, which is we have the opportunity, not in a Shabbos environment, to present our shilas to a Bezdin, and the Bezdin can paskin that shilah for you. The challenge that exists with all these restaurants and all these caterers coming Shabbos, you don't have the opportunity to get on the telephone and make that phone call. Yeah. So at times, the
either hopefully there's a local rav that will practice the shayla for them, or then you're really relying on the nemonis of the Mashgiach to be able to know what is within his purview, what is not within his purview of being able to paskin. That's where you need the nemonis.
Yeah.
So that's why.
So I'm curious, which bezdin do you say you go to a bezdin? Who's your bezdin?
Okay, so there are three dayanim in like Shlomo Gissinger,
Yeah.
Moshe Chaim Kahan, and Shmuel Meir Katz. They assist the bezdin of the Kof-K.
So you have a serious bezdin. Serious Talmidei Chachamim here. Wow. Okay. So how do you check the Yerushalayim of a guy knocks on your door? He says, "Hi, my name is Yassel. I'm from wherever, and I saw a job in the paper, an article in the paper. You're looking for a Mashgiach. I'm interested. How do you check it?"
So by and large, there's always references, and they're going back to the local rav and the rabbanim within the community. So normally we're pretty comfortable with the response that we get, but the most important is naniach that you've accepted the person's Yerushalayim. Going back to what we said from the Taif, at times there's a huge tircha involved in it, and even if a person has their own personal manas, there's a whole different level which is required to be able to be the tircha involved in it. So one of the basic tenets in the Kof-K, and when we do it with the rest of what we're doing within the RCBC, is that there's a Mashgiach on the Mashgiach who is going somewhere around once a week to be able to check within the facility to make sure that the Mashgiach is doing his job. So the Yerushalayim is really, honestly, is an aid with the aid based on speaking to the reference, speaking to the local rav. Their monas of being able to do their job and being a balachrai, that's something that we have a responsibility to a checks and balance.
Okay. And now, do you faher the guy at all in halacha?
Depending on what their responsibility will be.
So if it's a Shabbos job, you would want to faher him on Hilchos Shabbos a little.
You would want to know that they have enough. Again, they have enough knowledge to be able to know what is a suffix, and in the event that they're isolated, then they really need to know what to do. In the event that they have access to a rav to paskin the shayla, and they have access to be able to present, then they clearly need to know at least what is the suffix.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, but again, a guy came to me. He was by a program, and they were cooking hot water on Shabbos. They were actually putting it. So he went over to the Mashgiach, and the Mashgiach said, "What's wrong with that?" He never heard of Ma'aseh Shabbos. And this was a Hamachshir out of Milan, a Rabbi Gorelik, and I called him up, and he said, "Yeah, sometimes they know, and sometimes they don't know." And I said, "How do you put a Mashgiach in a place where the guy doesn't know that there's an Isser of Ma'aseh Shabbos?"
Okay. In a general statement, I'll concur with you. I try to avoid at best to be able to comment directly on any one hashgacha.
Okay. Which leads me to a question, Rabbi. If somebody's going to a doctor, they have a stomach ailment, so they call 22 people and they say, "Who's the best doctor?" So-and-so, they say, he's in Maimonides. Maimonides, I think, is a 50-50 chance of getting out alive for any ailment, right? So I'm not going there, I'm going here, I'm going there. We've called 15 hashgacha agencies. We asked somebody, is there a difference? There's absolutely a difference. Who's the better? Who's the worst? We can't say. We don't want to get sued. We don't want to make enemies. So I ask you, when it comes to somebody has an ingrown toenail, he can make 3 phone calls and find out who could do it in the best way. When it comes to things that are metamtim, the leiv, and the nefesh, there's nobody who's going to speak. What is the consumer supposed to do?
What a tough, difficult question. My father, for generations now, has taken the position that it's hard to fit the criteria of the Kof-K in terms of saying Lashon Hara to be able to give a honest, critical evaluation of another hashgacha. Because do you fit all the t'nayim in the event to be able to make it? And normally, by and large, we're okay every dover, and it's hard to be able to fit those t'nayim. So his position has always been, don't make the comment. then
but respectfully, but respectfully, the other guy could be eating something that he would never eat. It could be, forget about, drabanans. It could even be deraisis, right? So where is there a bigger tayelis than to say? I mean, if somebody asks somebody, can I go into this restaurant and it's treif? Would you say it's an issa lashon hara to say that, or would you say, Rabbi, you're over on l'fnei iver leisita mechshel if you send the guy in?
I understand. It's a very, very tough challenge.
So what do I do? I'm doing a program on kashrus. We've asked 15 different places. Would you say who's the better hechsher? So we had one fellow. He said the two best hechsherim are the OU and the Kof-K. And it's really run institutionally with reports and Mashgiach on top of Mashgiach, but he wouldn't say who people won't say, we're trying to who rank the hechsherim, who are the best hechsherim.
What I would respond to is like this. There are people that are in the know, like people involved in hashgacha, that are independent. And maybe that is one approach that would be in your best interest. The other approach might be as follows, does it? The friendship between yourself and the average individual. You yourself, a person who has ideas, can call the kashrus agencies, and I believe the kashrus agency has the following application. Part of the reason why we have a bezdin is because I didn't feel that there should be one Paisik that should pass in and say, okay, it's on this Paisik's shoulders, and everything he says, the entire world has to accept this Paisik's shot. The Paisis brings down that there's a din of Lifnei Iver, the Shammai had to be Modiyah Beisil, they still had to be Modiyah Beishamai, because even if I hold something's mutter, I can't be machal to somebody that held that it is awesome. So therefore I felt that there had to be a bezdin paskening, and they look at it and are Mashar both what their own personal position is. At the same time, what they feel it's Tibor, it's Altiyam and Amatmiyam. The educated person can ask pointed questions, and I think the hashgachos will answer. I'll answer your question about this, I'll answer your question about this, and then you can potentially put together a fabric of what you see is the standards that they have in order to create an educated decision. Sadly, I believe if hashgacha started just banking and throwing out names and so on and so forth, it would wind up being more of a political and PR, and it would not necessarily be based on fact and actual policy. If educated people like yourself or abundant who are educated, who have a sense of knowledge, actually pose the question, how do you arrive to the psak? What is your position on X, Y, and Z? I believe it could create a body of knowledge that would be able to answer your question.
That's true. Rabbi, I agree. But here's where I think there's a bigger issue than that. I think on the halacha, most kashrus agencies will have enough of a Talmud Chacham, if somebody's calling them, to give them a reasonably psak that'll be accepted. What I think is a bigger issue is who's actually showing up on time, writing the reports, doing the due diligence that's necessary. I mean, to sit in a room and to point to a shach or a taz, you know what I mean, or a lechem apanim, whatever the case may be, and say, well, we do this, everybody could, that's very easy. It's the hard work is was your guy there at 7 o'clock in the morning? Did he stay all day? Or is it too expensive? Or was flying him there expensive, so since it's a private company and it's profit-based, we cut out the cost? I mean, that's much more going to be the issue than whether we're saimach on,
you're 100% correct.
A shari tshuva or not. You know what I mean? How do we find that out? Who does the work and who doesn't do the work? Which doctors cut corners and which doctors don't cut corners? Which hospitals are careful? They use bleach all the time so there are no staph infections. Why should our ruchniistic health be taken less seriously than our physical health? And why are none of the doctors? They have the best doctors in America. They come out every year, the best doctors in New York. Why can't we get, it's like by the police, there's a concept of the blue silence. No policeman will master on another policeman, no matter what he did to anybody. So how do we as consumers say which hashgachas cut corners and which ones really do the work?
Okay. What I would respond is there are the national certification, which I think pretty much stand on their own reputation. When you're dealing with the smaller hashgachas, then yes, there is a certain challenge that maybe say to flip it around. the onus of proof winds up on the hashgacha as opposed to the individual. And I concur with your statement, meaning, for example, I have two people with chemistry degrees. You can be a Talmid Chacham as much as you can know Shas Bavli back and forth, but to walk into a flavor facility, if you don't know the nature of chemicals and you don't know what is a physical shaila and not, or you don't know the process of manufacturing ingredients, you won't be able to know whether or not something is missing in your missing information. So yes, there's a certain measure of expertise that the people have to have. There's a certain amount of diligence that the people have to have. And unfortunately, I'm not sure if I have a good answer for you. Again, I believe the best answer to that, though, would be there are independent people who have been in kashrus for a very long time.
Let me ask you a question. Could a woman do you use women mashgiachim?
So, David, I will answer again in theory versus in practice. In theory, there's a tshuva from Mashgiach that's mekel. The Sternbach has tshuvas that are mekel. The Paiskim talk, it's been, majority of the Paiskim are of the opinion that one can use a woman to be a Mashgiach. In a practical sense, our office has not used it in the industrial level, the industrial factories. In the restaurant level, I think it's more of a just practice. It's been used minimum. It's not something that we go out and say, advocate and run to be able to find women. It's not that we push away women. It has become, in practice, a male-dominated industry. But in the halachic principle, Moshe, the famous story of a tshuva he wrote to a Rav in Pittsburgh, Moshe was basically mekel and held that in circumstances of need, a woman is perfectly capable, perfectly neman. His only issue he had was the potential din of shrora. If you want to go through that discussion, we can. But he held her.
And by the way, with the OU, I was someplace. The OU took out a female mashgiach. And I can tell you, I was chayku Irish, and she was better than the men mashgiachim. The one I.
The bottom line is my wife. I think my wife, like many wives, would say she's in charge of my kitchen, and she would never trust me in the kashrus in my own kitchen. So, No, women are definitely.
There's a famous story. I think the Rebbitzin of Reb Shmuel once found him in the kitchen. She started screaming at him, "The chafe stop mein kich." It's like a. Okay, so here's a question: what are the different standards you have, let's say, for a mashgiach, for where it's a shaymatayru mitzvahs is the owner of the restaurant or the factory, where it's a not shaymatayru mitzvahs, and when it's bechal in one of the umay sa'ilam? What are the different standards you have for mashgiachim?
So the first step, which I think the most basic for us, is in the event that there's a shaymatayru mitzvah, the balabas, we are letting him a minority of time to be the mashgiach, which means he can function as the Mashgiach for less than 50% of the time, and still must remain a Mashgiach 51% of the time, who takes the bulk of the work. Obviously, we would not take that position on somebody who is not from, or somebody who's not Jewish. To me, that is the first and foremost, the most basic difference between the two. Then again, it's matching the Mashgiach to the specific store, specific circumstance, is something that is unique on each and every case, and yes, we will incorporate whether they're from or not Jewish into that evaluation.
Okay, it's a matter of common sense, sort of. Like, how much do you believe the person? What is the level of difficulty? These are things that are very common sense, very hands-on, and it's hard to give gedarim. Okay, nichnas v'yaitza. Let's say, take a restaurant that you guys give a hechsher to, right? What do you do? Nichnas v'yaitza, how often?
Okay, so the answer to that has evolved within the kashrus industry. Amongst the major kashrus hashgachas, my understanding is both milchiks and fleishiks has a mashgiach tamidi. What I mean by that is as I articulated, a mashgiach for at least 51% of the time if it's from own, and the owner can work as the mashgiach for less than 50%, or a full-time mashgiach. So there really isn't. And I believe 20 years ago there was that flip. Once upon a time, it used to be that the milchiks would be a yotze v'nechlas. Us within the Kof-K, and I think majority, not all, I don't believe all, but the majority of the national, the larger hashgachas have hashgacha tamidus the way I described it, a front person working there at all times, both by Milch's inflation. Some of the locals are not of that position because they have a different responsibility. They have a responsibility to their local constituents, and if finances does not allow it, that's their ability to make that halacha.
So let me ask you a question, and now we're going off of halacha, and feel free not to answer it. I just opened up, a burger place, a chicken, Chinese chicken, or what does it cost to have a mashgiach?
Wow. So now we go all the way back to the beginning of the story. So the Kof-K used to have a lot of restaurants. And one of the challenges of restaurants is being able to find somebody who's qualified and is going to be able to work. Unfortunately, the pay in these restaurants are somewhere in the ballpark of $20 an hour. So the Kof-K basically requires that all the mashgiachim be paid fully on the books, everything being kadash kadin. It's hard to be a mashgiach on kashrus when you're turning your head in terms of legality. So the Kof-K required that. That made the cost to the restaurant to be exorbitant. And the reality is, even if you're take that example, taking $20 an hour and the restaurant's open for 50 hours a week, you're looking at $1,000 a week, the cost to the mashgiach. That is never mind once it's on the books, then you have Social Security, you have all the other costs in it. The cost to the restaurant can exceed $60,000.
Now, if you have a hashgacha where one mashgiach is overseeing 10 restaurants, what would you say about that? So from what my takeaway from speaking to you is, if they're not Shomer Torah mitzvahs, you can't eat there. If they are Shomer Torah mitzvahs, I would take the position, now it's already a judgment call, because la halacha, since they're huchzik b'kashrus, you don't need a mashgiach. The only reason you need a mashgiach is yechayishish. Maybe the guy's not doing it well enough. We don't hold the takanas vad haratzis that the lechem apanim brings is not brought in the Shulchan Aruch or in the Aruch HaShulchan. So if it's all from the argument could be made. Yes, you could eat there, but it's a pretty weak value of hechsher. Wouldn't you say that?
I would agree to that. But David, I want to make the following qualification, which I think is important.
Yeah.
There's the world of New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. Then there's a world of Kansas City, Las Vegas, Pittsburgh. To me, what's very important is like this. The national hashgachos have a responsibility to their national constituent. The local rabbanim have an obligation to paskin for their local community. And the reality is, bein l'chumra, bein l'kula. I don't really have a right. That was the other reason why the Kof-K went out of it, is because we never went into an area where there was a local rabbanim and said, we want to give the hashgacha there. Because I firmly believe the achrayus for the kashrus in the community sits with the local rabbanim. Bein l'chumra, bein l'kula. The local rabbanim could come into it.
You go to Kansas City and they say, look, we can't afford a mashgiach tamidi by the pizza store. And if we don't have a kosher pizza store, people are going to go to the not kosher pizza store. So the Rav could maybe make an exception, something like that. Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's what I would say. Correct.
So, but let me ask you something. Since nobody will give us an answer as to what's a good hechsher and a bad hechsher, but if somebody goes to a restaurant and they say, "Could I speak to the rabbi?" and they say, "Oh, the rabbi is not here. When is the rabbi here?" He comes for an hour in the morning and an hour tomorrow. And is it fair to say, well, you know what? There's something wrong with this hechsher. Would you say that?
Okay, I won't use the terminology that pretty good chanting in Tarfus. I agree that you probably have a shayla of Bosh and I agree with your statement, which is that advocate for people to do that, because the only way significant change will happen is when people are held responsible. So if a person walks in and finds that, they should call the Hamachshir and say, what's going on? And ask the question to create the dialogue, to create the level of respect. In the end, the hashgachos are the clientele of the hashgachos are the consumers, and the consumers do have a right to ask for certain standards to be maintained. And if they see that it's not, they should voice the opinion. And in the end, I believe if you do push, and there are individuals pushing for that checks and balances, there will be improvement.
Okay, Rabbi Center, what do you do? Nichnas for Yetza. Half these companies, one is in, Mohawk, Alabama, one is in China. How could you be a Nichnas for Yetza in these far-flung companies all around the world creating products? You could get there once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year. That means the rest of the year, anything could happen. How do we as consumers say, how do we get a hechsher on that?
You're 100% correct of it. If in the event that there was actually on-site, that there was needed for constant nurses, the Shach says that the constant of Yotzev Nechas is nurses.
Moshe has the wrong tshuva on it, yeah?
Right.
Real nurses, real practical nurses.
Right. So
right?
In reality, is if you have if you have something that's kosher and non-kosher, and in that kosher and non-kosher facility, you're not going to be able to do it in China. We certify hundreds of companies in China. Those companies are what we would refer to as Category 1, which means they are basically kosher by nature, and your certification is to determine that the process of manufacture is one that really should not be able to be messed up.
Well, that was Rabbi Ari Center of the Kof-K. Thank you very much, Rabbi Ari. We have on the phone with us a Mashgiach who's been involved in Hashgacha in all the major Hechsherim for many years, and we wanted to find somebody who would actually give us a little bit insight. As anybody who's been listening knows, we've asked already 18 different Hechsherim. Could they tell us who are the good ones, who are the not such good ones, what should the consumer be aware of? And to a certain extent, we've gotten the police blue wall of silence. So we have a Mashgiach with us with a lot of years of experience who's actually able to tell us a little bit about what goes on inside. Thank you very much for your time. So can I ask you, can you please share with us, when I buy one of the Hamish Hechsherim, and they could be, we sent the grill out this week shopping, and we're going to share with everybody the differences in pricing that a Hamish versus a not Hamish Hechsher. Is it worth the money, and what are you getting for it?
There was a Mashgiach, good friend of mine, which somebody asked him in the store, a customer says, this product over here, is it Pas Yisrael? He says, well, looking at the Hamish Hashgacha, I guarantee it's Pas Yisrael. If it's kosher, I have my doubts. Because it depends. All the ingredients, basically, that all the Hamish are using all come from the major international certifiers. So really, if somebody says, I don't want to rely on OU or something like that, buddy, go plant your own vegetables and your food and everything else and stay out of. There is no such hashgacha that you could use. That's item number one. The second thing is, what is the Hamish hashgacha adding or subtracting from the product? So we have to look, where are they coming from? Is it that they went into the business of hashgachas in order to do something for the consumer that they were lacking till now? Yes, till now there was I call it a misconception. OU is today if we can't take it into our house. But Hamish Hashgacha, what they do, they don't have access to all the information and everything else like it, ingredients, thousands upon thousands of ingredients, methods how it's made. They're not chemists or anything like it. So they've gone into all these major offices of the Hashgachas, which I've seen them, or now they've already educated themselves and they don't even go down anymore. They just call up and they say, could I give Hashgacha on this is a Mahadran? So some guys in the Kashrus organization say, could you explain to me what's Mahadran? And they hem and haw because they can't explain what Mahadran is. So basically like this, the Hamish Hashgachas, let's go into the national Hashgachas, most of them. Let's start with OU, it's easier that way. Everybody over there is trained. Nobody goes out in the field without training, and nobody gets hired in the office or anything else without training. All of them have smicha, etc., etc. There's professional oversight there. There's checks and balances. The Hamish Hashgachas refuse to do recalls. I and others have called them up and say, you have a problem with this and this product. They should issue a recall.
What type of a problem? Give me an example of a problem.
Even infestation. Extreme infestation. They say, well, it's out over there. The next time we do it, we'll make sure that it's done correctly. They know, but we have now an issue. my answer that I get from them, and this is basically across the board, that's why there's no reason to give differences of this name or that name, because they're all the same thing, basically. Say, we are in the business of giving hashgochas, we're not in the business of recalls, and if you want recalls, go to the organizational hashgochas. That's literally the wording that I picked up from a number of them that way. Here, we had just now, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, there was there had to be a recall on one of the products that had beans and barley that was infested, which makes for the last 5, 6 years they've always been infested. Who put out a letter of concern? The company, not Hashgacha. Is that what it's all about?
Which company put it out?
This happened to be, it was Unger's.
And which company put it out? Put out the recall?
Unger's. There's Unger Hashgacha and there's Unger company that produces beans and barley.
Right.
There was a company that put it out on their stationery. They sent it out to a number of places and sent it out to Kashrus to that, to other places. They sent it out. Please post this thing a notice. Why in the world wasn't there a notice from the Kashrus organization should send out and say we've got a problem infested?
Which Kashrus organization did it?
Whoever's on there. Let me tell you, if I'm telling you that they're all the same, there is no reason to say this name or that name. They're all in the same peckle.
So let's say. So let me take this example. Would the OK, the Kof-K, the OU have put out a recall?
If they would have, definitely they would have, without a doubt.
So you're saying the Hamachshir do not do recalls. Then you was talking about training a minute ago. You say the OU does training. What type of training do they give?
The OU you have to go out on a number of different type of plans together with veteran Mashgiachim that were there, and they'll show you exactly how the equipment works, what you have to know. Did you get a form that you go down to the company that you have to check off? Did you check the cleanliness of the thing? How did you determine the cleanliness? Did you check if it's Eina Ben Yoima when you're doing kashering? How did you verify that? What books did you go through? How did you verify the ingredients? Was any of the ingredients opened? Was it closed? Was it sealed? What do you do now with the labels when you're finished? Did you seal it up? Did you find it sealed? How much did you do? There's a whole list of that. There isn't a single Hamachshir one that has a list that they give it to you that this is tell me what you've done and what you've checked out and what it is, and they just walk into the place. Yeah, okay, so we walk into the place and maybe there's a mirrorsis because the guy he's got the Shmoyne Begodim and he's got a mirrorsis or whatever else it is. I only found that this mirrorsis is really by Chol Yisrael that it says if even a cotton, sometimes you can use a cotton, there's a mirrorsis, the guy's afraid of that. But in all these things, it takes 5 minutes for anybody in a company to know that this Mashgiach is either up to par and he knows what in the world is going on, or he knows nothing, you can convince him, anything like that. They'll go, they touch a pipe to feel if it's getting warm or not. And they say, it's not warm enough, it's not warm enough. Buddy, it's an insulated pipe. What are you going to feel if it's getting warm? And what the temperature is? An insulated pipe, you're not going to feel anything. But they don't realize that, and they don't realize a lot of other things. So where we're going. So training they don't have. Another big problem they have that they take in people of the mishpacha, the sons, the son-in-laws, and et cetera, so they know they can't get fired. You go, one had a son-in-law, very interesting, was it a catering job, and I see over there that they have noodles, pasta from Italy, no hashgacha on it. So I asked him, could you explain this to me? He says, what could be wrong with the noodles? It's only water and flour. I say, yeah, but in Italy, it's very common to have dairy in the pastas. Oh, I didn't know. I say, you take it without hashgacha at all? You take it with somebody hashgacha and it's part of hang a hat on, but you're taking it in without hashgacha? Then I ask him, I say, by the way, the ovens over here, I say, how you deal with the Bishul Yisrael over here? He says, what's the problem? The Mashgiach, I turned on the oven in the morning. I say, let me ask you, is there a pilot or not? He says, I didn't like the pilot, but we have 2 Mashgiachim. This one has something like that. The other one lit it. I say, really? And maybe there is no pilot over here. He says, what are you talking about? They all work with a pilot. I say, yeah, but this happens to be an electronic oven, and it doesn't work with a pilot. So if you turned it on this morning and the guy opened up the door to put in things, whatever else it is, and he closed it, you have everything is Bishul Akum. Oh, we got to find out.
So you're saying that to become a nurse, you need a license. To drive a car, you need a license. To become a teacher in New York State, you need a license. A physical therapist needs a license, but hashgacha, anybody basically who learns in yeshiva
take organizational hashgachas. People are not licensed.
I'm saying there is no training. You're saying there is no training given to mashgiachim. If you walk out of yeshiva,
ones, in general, no. General, there is no training at all that's given to those mashgiachim. In an OU place, there isn't a mashgiach that'll go out into the field without having that he was in these type of places, etc., etc. And then when they get back his report where he wrote about the production and people review it that really are old-time veterans, they start seeing, they say, he missed up on this, he missed up on that, we got a problem over here. The next time he goes out to the company, we're sending somebody along, we want to see what he's doing. Because something doesn't add up. But there's a review of it.
So let me ask you another question. Most of us were under the impression that all Hamachshir Sherim is they basically have an underlying hechsher from either an OU, a Kof-K, etc., and they send another person for Bishul Yisrael, etc. Is that true, or are there times when the Hamachshir Sherim do it from the ground up?
Well, let me respond this way. If you would have on a product that has a Hamachshir and an OU on there, and the OU would do what is proper to do, to have their own man there, and you have the Hamachshir one that's taking care of another extra chumer and hiddur, I got to tell you, it's the greatest thing around. But if you have that they're there themselves, you don't know what happened, and they're there doing it, and I got to tell you, I have big kindness on these organizational hashgachas. If you have your emblem on that product, you better make sure that you're in charge and you have your man out there making sure that it meets your standards, so the people that really want kashrus, and not hummus and doing, but they want kashrus, like me and many other people, that your man is there taking care of that production that's being done. Good. The other one wants to add certain hummus and do as long as we're not detracting from the basic kashrus, kol hakavod.
So what percentage of products have both, and what percentage just have the Hamachshir?
I'm saying, even when you have both, it's only the Hamachshir, because the other ones are not sending out their mashgiachim. They're saving money on it.
So you're saying the OU is being saimach on the Hamachshir?
Well, by those productions, that's right. The only time they're not being saimach on the Hamachshir is when they have only their emblem on there.
So how is the OU? But how is the OU then saimach on these hersherim when they're sending out untrained?
Because they're saimach on the productions or the visits, inspections that our mashgiachim do. So what we have just the OU on there, we're relying on our regular inspections, whatever it is, once a month, twice a month, 2 times a year, whatever they've decided is needed. But when there's a production made, even a Pesach production, it's made with a Hamachshir on there, the organizational hashgachas don't have that person there to making sure. You don't know what they kashered, how they kashered. I know what company would have had at the Hamachshir one's doing there, and the OU was going to be doing after the Hamachshir finished, and they were going to rely on the Hamachshir one that did the kashering. So their Mashgiach came a little bit later. And he goes to this Hamachshir Mashgiach, he says, upstairs, they're pouring in stuff that's chametz, and it's going into the hoppers of these. What in the world are you doing? He says, I'm busy just with this over here. I don't care what else the company does. I was told to watch this. I'm down here. Everything is fine. He says, absolutely not. He says, I got to tell you one thing. He says, when you get finished, I'm going to rekasha, and I'm shutting down the rest of the stuff. And that's exactly what he did was he told the company, you cannot operate 2 different kinds. When we're doing Pesach over here, this place has to be spotless. You will shut down all the other equipment in the place that we will not do it. But the Hamachshir one had no problem doing it. So if you don't have the OU or whichever organization it is, the Kof-K, has their people there, if you have your emblem on there, you better cover yourself and have your mashgiach there that's in charge, and let these guys add all their chumash and hidurim that they want, but give me basic kashrus.
So I had on the phone a mashgiach. He said that he was buying Lieber's product, and he called up the factory where they made it, and he said he would like to speak to, ask some questions. When was the Mashgiach there, etc. And they said, he said it was Hanover's. I forgot what they make, but it was something Hanover. He said
Hanover makes beans and these kind of things.
So he said he spoke to the OU Mashgiach, and he said, I want to know who was, when Rabbi Weissmandel was there, because I have some questions. And the guy said he never shows up. He's just saimach on us 100%. Is this
I
common
got to tell you,
practice?
if that's what it is, that's the product I would eat. That's it. Give me that product, that Hannibal product, that the Hamachshir, the Hamachshir is relying on the OU, bring it into my house and I will eat it.
But my question is, if I'm buying Lieber's and I'm paying an extra 15% for the item based upon Lieber's Mashgiach showing up and he doesn't show up there, isn't that like a Chesed Mishpat Shaila?
That I don't know, but I'm telling you, that's exactly what I'm looking for, those kind of products. Bring it into my house galore and let them write on there, we're relying on the OU, and that's the way they're going to be given kashrus.
So what percentage of Hamish Sherim are basically they're just relying on the OU and then just putting another sticker on top of it?
The more the merrier, and I hope that they all do it.
Wow.
I'm looking for kashrus. I'm not looking for something to do.
Let me ask you about not Hamish Sherim. Lately, the OU has started, this is what I've heard, Me'achariya Paragod, on Star-K products being very suspicious and accepting them on a one-off basis. They don't accept the entire Hechsher. I heard the Vada Kashrus of Queens had a similar issue. Do you have any insight into the OK?
But tell it to me a little bit more, Mamalosh, and what do you mean they accept it one-on-one? That means they're not accepting all their products carte blanche.
Yes, if they know who it was and what it was, they'll accept it. Otherwise, they say we just don't accept you prima facie, like they would, let's say, the Kof-K or the OK, etc. Could you give us any insight into that?
And they're not accepting from which one?
The Star-K from Baltimore.
Oh, that yes. That they've of what I've picked up, my what the Maisa was is they started off in India. They had first-hand knowledge from the Mashgiach that was running for that Baltimore Hashgacha was running the India place, and he had a lot of problems with standards of kashrus, which he was questioning, and he was challenging the office over there in Baltimore until basically they told him you got to take a walk. But he knew that there's scandals that's going on there. There is no kashrus over there, so he went and notified the major kashrus organizations. My question to major kashrus organizations is, if this is what they're doing over there, don't you think they're doing it all over like that? But just nobody followed up. Why don't they do reviews?
So the Star-K fired the Mashgiach, who was basically complaining that the standards of kashrus in India were not up to. Did anybody approach the Star-K and say, like, you know, the Mashgiach is not against us. It's not like a whistleblower. We should be very happy he's telling you that there's a kashrus issue. Why would you fire?
What my understanding is that the kashrus organizations had a telephone conference with the Baltimore Hashgacha regarding these issues. They got no concrete answers of why these things are going on. They did ask that we're not going to accept your ingredients in our product until we could do reviews. And so the Baltimore Hashgacha asked, who are you going to send for review? They gave them one name. They said they're not acceptable. Another name not acceptable. I don't know if they've ever picked a name, and I doubt if they'll ever be able to pick a name that'll be acceptable.
So how do we as consumers? We've asked all of them. They said everything's wonderful. We can't. If I wouldn't have asked about the Star-K, if we wouldn't have asked about Hamish Sherim, people wouldn't know anything. What are we as consumers supposed to do?
It's $1 million question. I don't have a very clear answer, but I think that as a starter, if all the organizational hashgachas will make sure that any time their name is on there together, they will have their own man being in control of the hashgacha that's being done, even with special productions. Yeah, the Hamachshir company should pay for that. I mean, you can't expect me to pay for it, but the Hamachshir ones, the distributor, should pay for the OU Mashgiach to be there, be in charge over there. This other one says, I want to do chumras and idurim, but don't forget, he's got to tell them the chumras and idurim the day before, because usually, very often, not usually, but very often they arrive late after the production started and the OU man has been there already. So send it in to him and tell him what you want to have done, and he'll institute it. That's the first thing to do. People that want to have, they still want to be able to support the mishpachas of the Hamachshir distributors and that. Call it covered. Maybe a tzedakah, maybe other things, but we need basics. The basics is that we have to have over here the organizational hashgachas. You have Mashgiach here. Rav Breuer, when he set up his hashgacha 60 years ago, he got up from the pulpit and he said, I will set up a hashgacha that has no chumras and no hidurim. And the reason is, I want basic kashrus. And if I start with chumras and hidurim, I may have chumras and hidurim, but I'm not going to have kashrus. I want kashrus. That's the same thing I'm looking for, and I hope every consumer is looking for the exact same thing. And what all these hashgachas, I understand the OU uses the money for a lot of other tzarchei tzibur, that they have, they're doing gewaltige Sachen. But first comes the consumer, the kosher consumer. Give him what he's entitled. If your emblem is on it, give him your responsibility. You have to have your shoulder on there.
So is it fair to say then that you do not trust Hamachshir? Is that a pretty general, would that be an accurate quote? In your house, do you use the Hamachshir?
I have some, but every one of the items that I use, I do a check to find out who was the Mashgiach, what was there. It's very hard to get that information. Most of them will not give information, but I have my methods of finding out who it is. I'm in touch with certain Mashgiach, I'm in touch with other ones, and there is basically people that will talk as long as they know it's not going to get back, and that's what I have. But I have most of my items that I got to tell you that I feel comfortable in the house is OU and Kof-K.
So, in closing, is it fair to say that the large institutional hachsherim, which would be the OU, the Kof-K, the Star K, probably CRC, they are the standard. And when you go to these little hachsherim, the quote-unquote the Hamachshir, it's sort of like being stuck in a hospital in Oshkosh. You just never know who the doctor is, what medicine he's using, if his equipment is antiquated or not. Does he show up in time?
It's called in English Russian roulette.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Kol tov. Have a great
one.
one.
Bye-bye.
We have on the phone with us Rabbi Shmuel Spiegal, who is a Mashgiach for the OU, for the Star K, for many other Achsherim. He's a Talmud of Stanford, Baranei Hershkowitz, a Talmud of Beis Medrash Gevaya, a Musmach of Beis Medrash Gevaya. Welcome, Reb Shmuel.
Shalom Aleichem, Reb David.
So, Shmuel, you're a Mashgiach for many years. What is a Mashgiach's job?
Well, that depends if he's going to a plant or he's going to a food establishment. So, for instance, if a Mashgiach goes down to a plant, the first thing he has to do is he has to check all the ingredients. Now, most of the ingredients that are in the plants come with hechsherim. They're all boxed up and they have hechsherim. The Mashgiach's job is to make sure everything is sealed and wasn't tampered with and has the proper hechsher that the hechsher he's working for approves. So if there's an item that doesn't have the proper hechsher, doesn't have the hechsher, so that could delay the run and stop the process.
Now, Rabbi Spiegal, are there hechsherim that are better than others?
There definitely are hechsherim that are better than others. There are hechsherim that are obviously more stringent. For instance, if the Mashgiach has a problem, a lot of times, so it's not the Mashgiach's job to paskin the shaila. Obviously, if it's a small, it's a small shaila, then the Mashgiach is a little bit of a Talmud Chacham. He knows what the answer is. It's okay. But if he runs into a problem, he's supposed to really call the one who's on top of him, who's in charge of this plant. Now, a lot of times, there's pressure from the hechsher itself to allow the item to go through because they don't want to lose their count and kahena v'kahena. So even though the Mashgiach is bringing out that there is a problem with this and this, they'll be looking for a kula somehow to make sure that this item gets through. So it's very frustrating a lot of times for the Mashgiach itself if he's working with a so-so hechsher that the standard of kashrus won't be up to par.
So, if you had to pick the 4 or 5 best hechsherim, what would they be?
That's too much of a political thing. I'm not going to say which hechsher is good, which hechsher is not good. Obviously, if I'm picking hechsherim that are good and which aren't good, which are good.
So, Rabbi Spiegal, let me ask you a question. If you're a consumer, right?
Yes.
You just you're plainy almighty, and your wife, you want to be zoyer and kashrus kedabai. I'll tell you a story. My father was a rav in many kahillas out of state, so he was rav in Virginia and many small little cities.
Mm-hmm.
So he told me, my mother said he used to get up at 5:00 in the morning to go when they milk the cows. There was no Chalav Yisrael. You have people that are very nizar, and in Kashrus, it's a. What are you supposed to do? If we've asked, you're the 18th Mashgiach we've asked. Could you please tell us what's a good hechsher and what's not?
So if somebody would call me privately, right?
So, and all of them have refused. So you're saying that all the listeners should call you privately?
Well, again, if I'm going to say a statement and I might be wrong sometimes, I can't take the responsibility to say that this hechsher is better than that. It's a thing that I can't take on my plates. If you want to know what I personally feel, if somebody would call me, and there's a lot of things. You ask Adam Gadol a lot of times a shayla, he won't, he'll say things off the record, but he won't say it on the record. So if a person is so nizar, which the problem is, I think, again, I'm not talking, most people are comfortable with the Hashem there are out there.
But they're ignorant. Because people are ignorant, right? We had now in China. Let me give you a mushroom.
Right, they are ignorant, but even, you see, the problem with Chayrin is that there's so much going on there that even if they're not ignorant, if they hear there's an issue, right away they'll say it's politics, we don't know, we're not sure, it gets brushed under the rug, gets swept under the rug, and the oil goes right, because unfortunately the oil you have to supply the oil with kosher, they need it. So unless they know for sure, right, they don't know who to believe. It's like you're hearing a din Torah. You hear Tut Stadim. You don't know who to believe. You're not the Dayan. So, you hear Azam Maisa and Yana Maisa,
But Rabbi Spiegal, there is such a thing, let's say, there's ratings. There's ratings of doctors. You can get the Connolly reports. There's ratings of hospitals. There's ratings of almost every product. You go to
why doesn't the big Rabbanim of America get up and rate the Hechsherim? They eat the Hechsherim. They all eat the Hechsherim.
Okay.
They all eat the Hechsherim. So how are they samech on this Hechsher?
I have to tell you, Rabbi Spiegal, I thought by the police the blue wall of silence was a tough thing until I started Hechsherim. Now the CRC.
Again.
The CRC.
Like Rabbi Ellison told you that he doesn't want to sit in jail. Again, I'm not here. The question is not here to promote which hechsher is better than the other. If you want to give transparency, right, that's another issue. A lot of hechsherim have a problem giving transparency because there are a lot of troublemakers out there.
Define transparency. Define transparency. What does that like? What would it look like? Transparency.
Well, transparency is if you would call up a hechsher and they would tell you their policy, what they exactly what they hold on this and this item, and what they do, and how they kasher whatever has to be done, what the process is.
And
a lot of times there are people that are out here to make trouble. So there are Hashem are very weary of that because really the item is a good item and it is no problem. But people make tzaras for no good reason. Listen, Rabbi Levi with the OK had a story many years ago with the vinegar, right? With the Pesach vinegar. I don't remember exactly what the outcome, but they said they were roided him so much that he got sick from it, and he's not here anymore, the old Rabbi Levi. And I don't know, I was a bacher then, so I don't remember exactly, but that's the story going around, that they were mamish roided him ala soif. So it's very touchy when it comes to these things. There are certain Hamachshir that would say, okay, send me an email, and I'll respond. I have to know who they're talking to, what, when, and where. But that is a big problem with transparency because there are people that have nothing to do. They don't have a job. They're looking to make tumults. So they'll live on this type of stuff. So that's where the problem with transparency comes.
If I were to call up the OU and I would say, you're koshering so-and-so factory, can you send me the copy of the report you did on it? Would it be? They make it available or no?
Honestly, I'm not sure. It's possible they would, but possibly they won't. I'm not sure.
So you're saying
what do you mean? What type of a report?
I want to know who went there, when they went, when they showed up, were there any incidents, etc. Are such things available?
Maybe there's such a thing like that. Again, that's nothing transparent. You won't know anything. They'll send you who went there,
the CRC in Chicago.
Yes.
People are not aware of it. There are over 1,000 Hechsherim in the world. 1,000 Orthodox Hechsherim. the CRC certifies, they say these 110 or 120 are the ones that we're Saimach on. They vetted them, and out of 90%, they don't give a plumber to. 10% they say these are good hechsherim. Do you ascribe?
Right, but again, they don't tell you which hechsher is better than the other.
No, but
they just tell you that we approve of these 100 are approved hechsherim.
Right.
Okay? So again, when they're not rating, what you're asking me about, a doctor's rating or is it 5-star or not,
Rabbi Spiegal, but they're at least telling you the other 90% they don't use. That's
okay. So that I don't think anybody will have a problem, telling you that there are certain hechsherim that they don't use. They don't tell you they don't use it. They're not listed as the approved hechsherim.
Right.
If they're not there, they're not there. But they're not going to tell you that you can't use that hechsher. It's not a reliable hechsher. It's not on our approved list.
Right.
That's it. It's not on our approved list. And the OU will tell you it's not on our approved. The Star K will also tell you. If you call up the Star K, they will tell you that this hechsher is not on our approved list.
Now, Rabbi Spiegal, should it concern the average consumer that the OU for the last 6 months is only using the Star K on a case-by-case basis? They do not accept the hechsher in totality. Should that concern your average consumer? Again,
if the OU has reason to believe that they don't want to accept the Star K, so again, they obviously have a reason for it, and they have to be respected. They don't want to use the Star K for whatever reason it is. Every hechsher is entitled to use whatever products they want to accept.
Rabbi Spiegal, is there anything else you could share with us that would enlighten your average listener who is not an expert in Hashgacha, in Kashrus, etc.?
Okay, I'll say something as follows. I was in a plant in Pennsylvania, and there is a certain hechsher there, and it has an OU. And I asked, and the Mashgiach from the OU gave me he took me around, gave me a tour of the plant. And I asked him, tell me, how many times did this Hamachshir come down? He tells me, I'll be honest with you, I don't think he ever came down once. He might have given me some instructions on the phone, that he's more makbid on Bishul Yisrael, certain potatoes and kahena, but he said he has never come down to the plant that he could remember.
And
here we have a hechsher with a hechsher, and you have a Mashgiach that between me and you, if you look at him, you wouldn't eat in his house, right?
Who, the OU Mashgiach?
Yeah, the OU. I mean, he's not a hechsher person for sure will not eat in his house, right? Again, he's a very fine guy, and see, the OU Mashgiachim, it doesn't matter how they look, they follow protocol. They're very strict. Does he keep, is it Shema Torah mitzvahs? Yes. He even told me how he caught a certain plant bringing in, trefa meat on Shabbos, right? How did he do it on Shabbos? He stayed in a hotel nearby, and he walked to the plant, and he waited outside, and he saw trucks coming in and out, until they chapped that they were delivering meat. It was a plant that wasn't a meat plant, and they chapped that they were on the weekends, that's what they were doing. So the next day, on Monday, the OU called them up and told them we're taking off the hechsher because whatever. So they removed the hechsher without a problem because they were very happy that the OU didn't report them to the USDA. But again, he's a very erlicha person, but again, he doesn't fit the profile of a Haimish Eid. And a Haimish Eid is buying a Haimish hechsher because he wants a Haimish Mashgiach there. Correct?
So can I ask you a question? So you're saying that the Haimish hechsher just was Saimach on the OU, they never showed up. Did they charge more for their product?
I have no idea. It's a regular standard product that you find in every grocery store. That I guess it has to be.
So what's the message then? So what is?
So the message is very simple that you don't know. You don't know the Haimish hechsher. Sometimes it doesn't mean anything. It's a joke. That's
now,
basically
what it boils down to. Would you share with us the name of that hechsher? I know the answer.
I can't really share that. Again, on the record, I can't share the name of the hechsher because I can't do that. They'll deny it, whatever. They'll say it's not true. I'm just telling you what. Listen, there are certain. So
as you're telling me, is the message there are Haimish hechsherim that have very high standards and never show up, and the OU has regular kashrus standards, but it shows.
Right. I once heard from a OU Mashgiach, without mentioning his name, he said if you would take the OU's protocol and the Hamachshir Hechsherim standard and you put it together, then you would have the best Hechsher around. In other words, the OU has a very good protocol, and the Hamachshir Hechsherim have higher standards that officially they wouldn't, for instance, on the Maikenites, they wouldn't use the shellac because it's made out of beetle juice and kahena v'kahena. So they hold the OU holds it's not a problem. Rishol Belsky held it's not a problem, I believe. And
you're saying that, again, the standards are very high, but they don't show up very often.
Again, I can't say always. I'm giving you an example. I'll give you a different example. There's a certain product that comes from a major manufacturing company here, again, also in Pennsylvania, and they sell candies. And every once in a while, not every once in a while, all the time you have different hechsherim slap on a Hamachshir hechsher on the front. And, it's one of these candies that come from one of these, big candy manufacturers here in America. Now, I understand that that this plant there's no other Mashgiach besides the OU. And not only that, these companies are competing for closeouts, meaning to say, how are they getting a hold of this stuff? They're getting a hold of this stuff is because it's short-dated stuff, or it's closeouts. So they get truckfuls, tractor-trailer fulls of this candies, and they go ahead and purchase it, something that was manufactured, let's say, a year and a half ago. Now, it has an OU on it, right? So this was manufactured. How in the world does it have a Hamachshir hechsher today? So what do? They call up the OU, and they ask the OU Mashgiach, and they say to him, you were here in the plant, whatever, they slap on the Hamachshir hechsher. So you are thinking that when you're buying this candy, that the Mashgiach was there by the run. Meanwhile, this was when this was manufactured, right? There was no Hamachshir Mashgiach there. It wasn't even thinking of being a Hamachshir Mashgiach there because it was manufactured a year prior to this.
Just can I ask you a question, Rabbi Spiegal? This is already not, to me, this is not a Yered Day Shiloh. This is a Chesed Mishpat Shiloh. It's a Shiloh of Geneva.
Shiloh, what I know. Okay. What?
Would you agree with that? It's a Shiloh of Geneva's
daf? Yeah, it's a Shiloh, what I know. Yeah.
So can I ask you a question? It's more of it's Shiloh of Geneva's daf. How do you trust the Hechsher that you think the halacha in Chesed Mishpat they're ganavim, but we're trusting them for Yered Day? Could you explain that? Again, because they're not going to want to be machshel yidden like that, But then when a person buys it, they're assuming
but again, it is kosher. It is kosher. They're all same on the OU. Let me ask you a different question.
The guy who's buying more for it and is paying for that Hamachshir hechsher is not so the guy calls up the OU and asks the OU if it was good. He's thinking that they're being moist or something. So it's a shiloh of gezela.
Right, and somebody on your show told you that he likes the Hamachshir hechsher because it's a double hechsher. Right?
So my point is
not a double hechsher a lot of times.
My point is in Ilchas Eidus it says that somebody who's a gazlan is not neman for Eidus. So how could we trust these hechsherim al Eidech neman bisurim when they're fooling, when they're stealing from their?
You're saying not worse than an esrog soicha, huh? That's possible Eidus till Chanukah, as I gesagt, huh?
Yeah.
And I want to ask you a different question. You ever see an item that has 5 hechsherim on it? How many mashgichim do you think? How many mashgichim do you think are there?
I don't know.
There's usually only one mashgiach there for one of the hechsherim, and they're all piggybacking onto this one hechsher. So now, what happens if there's an issue, right? And somebody calls up this hechsher. So he says he thinks there's a problem, and this person from this hechsher calls. So he said, listen, I work for this hechsher. I don't work for you. I'm not responsible to answer any questions for you. If you want, you could call up the hechsher, but I'm not discussing anything, what I do, what, when, and where. So this is the Ma'aser B'chol Yom. You could pick up an item that has 2-3 hechsherim on it, and L'maisa, one of them is down there, the other one is not down there. There was a whole story once, and everybody kept on saying, oh, I'm not the one who's there, the other one is there. There was a problem with an item. Everybody kept on, passing the buck that my Mashgiach wasn't with, that Mashgiach is there. So that means that the whole thing is a joke. Marshall, the OU, when the OUs put their name on it, they take full responsibility. They're there. There's no such thing as the OU. I might be wrong, but from what I know, the OU is not going to put their name on a item and being samech on a different hechsher. It's just not going to happen.
Right. It's somebody told me a line, and I forgot who he said it from. He said there are a lot of hechsherim that have chumras, but the OU is kosher.
Right. See, there's also an issue, like I was telling you, regarding transparency. With when I gave a hechsher in a place, I spoke to a different Mashgiach. I said, my kitchen is open. You could come whenever you'd like. So he came down there, and there was a certain thing that he wanted that we held that it's not a problem, and there's a lot of hechsherim held it was not a problem, but he held that maybe for Lakewood. I said, listen, we hold it's not a problem. We're not hiding anything. Just like the OU would tell you, this is our policy. This is our policy. But then he went ahead and he started going to other people and started, listen, if you have a problem with an issue, that's not the way you do it. You don't bashmutz other people. This is a big problem and a shame. That's why they're very scared. I know me personally. I'm a Mashgiach, and I'm now in yeshiva, and we get also suppers, and it was coming from one of the food establishments here in Lakewood, and it was coming without tape, and a guy was delivering it. So instead of me making a whole tumult, I know the person from the hechsher. I called him up and I said, "It must be an oversight. Do me a favor, please look into this, and to explain to me why there's no tape on it. I understand because he has to be mavir. That's all heterim. But when you're sending meat, it should be with a guy should drive it. It should be taped."
Right.
He said, "Thank you very much," and he took care of it. And that's the way it should work between one hechsher and the other. In other words, we're not here to get you. We're here to work together, and we're here to make the world a better place. And unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way.
Thank you very much for sharing your experiences and your time.
Thank you. Bye.
Let's go to the chosen winner of this week's riddle.
Hi, my name is Mashgiach. I want to answer you two riddles. Number one, the riddle about how the Eden were allowed to be in the hand of Matan. If you look at Medrash, see the story, but how it went to Matan, you see clearly that the Eden had a kit of mime in the house, had a pitcher of water in the house, and when they gave it to Mitzi, they became dumb. And when if the Eden and the Mitzi were drinking together from a cup, it became dumb in the Mitzi's mouth. That's all it says in Medrash. So therefore, they wouldn't hand it from out. So they had it was water. The Mitzi had a nest that it became dumb in his mouth. So that's number one. And number two, the question that the Rasha says that the Muli boy Salaylu and you're not allowed to be Mal Balaylu, and if you were Mal Balaylu, even if they were allowed to, the Paisa was put checked it before, where it was by Nabayan. Found the chief is the other Yui, he addressed your question. He said that because first of all, the first question is because that year, but that from years of time, that can't learn anything out because you can't learn anything from it because in the time a lot of things that were only for that night, not the day. For instance, Nikshim Erusa, you're supposed to take the Tom Paiskel on the Eid, is also not the day. So it was Erus Shu, so that's why they were allowed to be Mal Balaylu. Oh yes, and another question that another answer that he answered is that says no question that whatever it says in the Gemara, whatever it says Laidu Kiyom Yui. It was day, so therefore it was day. It was that night was really day. It was lechtik, so therefore they were allowed to be mal because it was day. And afterwards they were able to drink the pipe because it was still day. So therefore, anyways, thank you very much for your show.